I was thinking like, how do I describe software modernization to yourselves? I mean, it's one of our service offerings. We have a few others around delivery and expert advice and training and so on, but software modernization in particular. So the way I was thinking is, well, let me think of some of the things that we hear when we are at our projects, our clients, in our teams, and what different people are saying. So I have a few kind of made up quotes, right? And I was thinking maybe you would find them kind of familiar, right? So a business sponsor saying everything takes too long, costs so much, software is really difficult. It's getting more and more difficult. We had an outage for a big set of customers. The customer had to phone in and tell us that our website was down. Why didn't we know first? My day is full of meetings with other teams and stakeholders. How do I get my work done, right? Takes ages to test and deploy my system, and then they tell me that my estimates are too pessimistic. When I change one thing, some other thing breaks, and I don't even know what broke. Why don't the backend developers get their act together and give me an API that can actually use? The website is a mixture of web pages and REST-ish APIs, and now they want me to build an app on top of that. They've changed the API, and now my app is broken. It takes them weeks to fix the defects I raise, and then they tell me I'm the bottleneck. We seem to be working very hard, but not achieving very much. Why don't the team give me a straight answer when I ask for an estimate? Right? So these are murmurs that you hear, and there's many, many more that you hear within teams, especially teams that are dealing with large, complex systems that have been going on for quite a long time. And they do become a roar, and we are all almost working in this din, trying to ignore this because we think that nothing changes, or that the ways that we've tried, or we don't have the kind of sponsorship to actually do something major, or the things we've tried haven't been working, or we just simply are too busy. We are building features on top of features, and things are getting more and more difficult, and we are just working in this environment, but there's not much that we think we can do. Right. This is quite relevant. It actually, if you look at the date, it's July the 18th, 2020. That's tomorrow, right? It's coming in the tomorrow's edition. And someone shared that with me this morning, and it's an article from The Economist to say, well, as software eats the world, more firms are being nibbled by their computer systems, right? And I love this picture because actually it's quite a good metaphor for how complex systems evolve. Within software systems evolve within software organizations. Things start quite small, directions keep changing. Developers and everyone who's kind of tasked with building the software is kind of adding things, and they're trying to kind of keep things aligned, and they have some kind of shape, but it turns into this monster that doesn't really have any particular shape, and it ends up kind of consuming the organization in many ways. So I thought it was quite an apt picture. I've read the article. The article actually is quite doom and gloom. I guess that's The Economist. But they, the way, they kind of end at like, even the new organizations they take, like people like Monzo and so on, that are doing well right now, that's also their fate. Eventually they will have the same problems that other software organizations have. And I thought that was quite a kind of a gloomy picture, and not necessarily true, because there are other ways, and you can work in a sustainable way, and you can turn the ship around as well. You can turn this monster back into let's say a cuddly animal, right? Something that can actually grow with you and grow nicely and support your business and not be in the way. So what is software modernization? Well, that's effectively what it is, right? It's about turning the ship around, right? So it's about stopping the rot. Right? Software, as all these murmurs that I talked about, all this noise, is actually in a way telling you that things are rotting, things are getting from bad to worse and worse and worse, and we are just piling more features on top of it. And there is a way of stopping this rot. Of course, you have to make some investment, but you don't have to stop the business, right? So a kind of a more boring way of saying that is that it's about improving your strategic systems. Why are you trying to improve it? Is you want to speed up the delivery, you want to reduce the cost of that delivery, and you want to mitigate many risks, right? So risks can be security and compliance on one end, or risk of defects in production, or it could be good people leaving your organization are also a risk, right? And all this is related. All okay so far? Any questions? No? Okay.
No, it's good. It's great.
All right. So what happens is, I mean, like I come from a development background and I'm kind of making it up as I go along in running a company. But, I've been in the same situation, right? We want to change things. We even have some ideas on what to change, right? But we don't really, we're not sure how to make a case for this change. And this is why when we are providing this offering, and I will show how we present this particular service to our market, our customers, is that what we are trying to do is to help them understand the business value, right? Because often what happens is that we say, you know what, we need to do test-driven development. That will make things better. But, from our point of view, we've internalized many reasons why TDD is possibly a good thing. But actually, to a business sponsor or to someone who's not technical, it doesn't really mean much. They don't really care about test-driven development. They don't care about microservices. They may have heard of it, right? They don't care about DevOps and these kind of things. What they care about are different things, the things that matter to them. So we need to put ourselves, as people building the software, put ourselves into people who are actually running a business through that software, or people that are using that software, and describe the problems from their perspective, and then present the solutions in that frame, right? So that's what we call the business drivers, right, of software modernization. And these are the 6 that we've kind of come up with, right? So basically we're saying that, the main drivers for modernizing, and this is continuously improving the way you build software, is around sustainable change. I'll describe these in a bit more detail. Around innovation, so that software is an engine for innovation and not just something that supports business innovation. Leveraging technologies, things are changing very fast, and we can't afford to fall behind. Business alignment, right? The way the way we are aligned to build software needs to align with the needs of the business, right? People and culture, people need to be happy, and it needs to be an environment where they are productive and flourishing. And risk management, that things that are a major risk to our business are mitigated, right? So this is purely from, I've just done a cut and paste from our website, basically. It's kind of sustainable change, as I was saying, right? It's about making sure that software is evolving alongside the business, right? That it's not getting in the way of your business, and that we are improving it as we go along, right? So there are a number of things that we can look at that then allow us to see, what does it mean? How do we know that we have sustainable, or our software is supporting sustainable change, right? So then you can go a bit deeper and say, well, the lead time, which is effectively idea to production, right? When we have an idea of something, how quickly do we get it into production, right? The cost of change, on average, each idea, what does it cost me to get it into production? How safe are the way I'm releasing? What's the defect rates? What the technical debt is also related to cost of change and a few other things, right? What's the level of this technical debt within my software? And these kind of high level, what are the things that I need to change? I need to improve. And then we go into the how. Then we go into things like the continuous delivery. We go into automation. We go into TDD, XP, modular architectures, DevOps, so on. But sustainable change is the thing that we are trying to do. Innovation is another aspect of software modernization, right? So software, as I said, it needs to become an engine for innovation and not just something that is just supporting innovation that's happening on the business side. And that basically means making experiments cheaper, allowing data-driven decisions, these kind of things. And underneath that, you've got things like A/B testing. You've got things like metrics and all those things. Technology is another aspect, right? That we need to leverage technology. So why? Because when things change, we don't want to get into a point where we're actually working with older technology, if there are better ways of doing things and we are not adopting them, people will steal a march ahead of us, right? It's also about reducing cost and mitigating risks on a technical side. But again, the how is scaling, cloud native applications, modular architectures, and so on. Business alignment is around understanding that change comes in a particular way, and does it sink into my teams in a natural way, or do I have to kind of split things into 20 tasks and send it to 4 wins and then coordinate everything and bring it all back, which basically means that my technology organization and the rest of the organization are not well aligned. I'm having to do all this translation between the two organizations that adds to waste. And people and culture, right? Have I created the right culture? Are people happy? Do they see the value in what they are doing? Do they have the autonomy? And do they have a culture that is nurturing them? And of course, risk management is another aspect. So I'm going a bit faster because I know we don't have a lot of time. Have I built in risk management within my processes, within my software, or is it just like an afterthought? And is it something someone else does, right? So again, when we think of what, then we can start thinking of certain solutions that will help us with that, right? So these are the kind of the 6 different, I would say, business drivers that we think. And this is how we need to speak to the business. When we want things to be improving, we need to put this in the language of the business and provide our solutions, really try to understand the problem, the root causes, and frame our solutions according to them, and not have the other way around where we have a solution and now we're looking for a problem. Any questions before I move forward? No? Okay. No. So thank you. So how is it relevant to mobile apps, right? Because a lot of that thing, when we talk about, of course, I don't know your organization as well, but certain organizations we go into, like sometimes, from app development point of view, I think a lot of these problems are in the back end, right? And sometimes things are a bit more simpler from some aspects, but not so much on the other aspects. So how is it relevant for mobile apps? And my view is it is, and we see it a lot, right? We do see unstructured monoliths on our apps, and I'm sure you've seen many. Things are like, when change comes, it's scattered everywhere within the code base, and the code base is massive, and the amount of information that everyone needs to maintain in their heads in order to make change happen is huge. And then we always see these bloated APIs because you got this. It's almost like the old medieval castles and the cottage industries that kind of start building outside the walls. Is because the backend systems are not providing the right kind of level of API or right level of functionality. All these cottage industries start popping up. Like little small functions here and there, facades, all sorts of things that are kind of sitting outside the core services, further complicating the whole code base, just so that because the two things were not aligned. And you get these team frenzies in apps as well, right? You get lots of teams working on small pieces and just constantly having to coordinate with each other and tripping on over each other, trying to get their thing done. And the thing is, everything to everybody is like the apps start bloating as well, and they're providing different types of features to different types of customers and needs and so on, and it's all kind of cobbled together in one place, and things are fragile. Things break. You make change here and something else breaks, and it's so difficult to to make sure that you haven't you haven't broken something else while you were changing one thing. And related to that is that testing is often difficult again. So we see a lot of these things, and I'm sure there are many other pains as well, right? So, and the other aspect to this is that apps don't live in isolation. They live within this larger ecosystem, right? And even if you've got the best way of building apps and nicely modularized and good teams kind of facing a particular business need and so on, but if the APIs and the backends and so on are they're not in your control, or other teams are working in them that have different priorities, different goals, you're still gonna suffer, right? So if you don't have those APIs, the backends and so on, most applications would then just be apps would then just be a glorified mock-up. You need everything together for it all to work. So where do we start, right? So this is one way. So I'm gonna list a number of things. It's not necessarily, we don't have like a recipe. Yeah, we start, like when people ask us to come and help them on the software modernization aspects, we look at many different things. We look at the need, the organization, and so on, and see how best to approach it. But these are some examples, and often are a good way to start thinking of things, right? So this is the three ways or the three principles that actually underpin DevOps movement, right? So it comes from Lean, and effectively the first way is to get the flow from the idea to production, right? So from dev to ops, right? Visualize what's happening inside it, which is effectively your value stream. Understand what the waste is, and make sure that the two are working in a way that there is flow between the dev and the ops, that there is no waste and things move in small increments and they move quickly, and there's no kind of, the time spent waiting for certain things is at its absolute minimum, right? So it's kind of creating this machinery or this pipeline or assembly line, whatever you call it, for it to get to for the idea to get into production as quick as possible. The second way is then to instill those feedback loops that help you to constantly improve your processes and your product, right? So this way of feedback in between this kind of within this value generation or value stream, but also the different stages within the value stream, the smaller feedback loops need to become inherent, and become the driver for the way you work and the way you improve, right? And the third way is to kind of create this culture where experimentation is positively not just encouraged, but is actually the way of working, that people are encouraged and everything is in place for you to make those experiments, to listen to the feedback, and to constantly change your product, the way you're building software and so on. And that's when you really become the true engine for innovation for your business. You can start by looking at certain things. So that's one framework you can have in mind, that kind of be your ultimate vision. And you can also start thinking about, these are the 4 key metrics kind of popularized by the Accelerate book that came out of the kind of the DevOps survey. I think it was done by Google or Puppet, I'm not sure. But so deployment frequency, lead time, mean time to restore, and change failure rate. They're fairly self-explanatory, but there is a lot of data behind it, and you can convince your business to kind of, you can point to research that's happened in terms of where the organization is, right? Is it in the low performer, mid performer, or high performers? And these are the metrics you can use to kind of place the organization. And then when you are looking at what I mentioned previously, you can start looking at where do you need to concentrate the improvements to kind of achieve benefits and to kind of slowly raise the bar. This is from team topologies, right? It's basically also looking at, are you well organized, right? When you start looking at understanding your value stream, you start understanding how the teams are working with each other and where the waste is, right? And team topology is a very good book to kind of discuss what it means, like what kind of teams you need and how they need to interact with each other, right? In order to create the organization that really fits your need, right? You also need to have a direction, right? So do you have a technical direction? Because one of the reasons things can be quite a big mess is because everybody has a different vision in mind. So if there is no technical vision, you can't expect people to pull in the same direction. So creating that direction is important. So understanding, do we have one? Does everyone buy into it? Do they have the skills, the ability, the commitment to actually move in that direction? And this vision includes everything from architecture, technology, to modernization, team ownership, all those things, right? You also, a vision is not enough, a direction not enough. People need to understand what the next step is as well, right? So when we are building feature on top of feature, they can also understand what our next steps are in terms of making sure that we are keeping everything in good order and moving it forward in a way that actually helps the business and is the engine for the growth that I was talking about, right? So that's when you need to have some kind of a roadmap, some kind of next step. You know, these things constantly evolve, but you need to know what the next step is. And how do you take smaller bites? You know, like you may have a lot of things to improve, and you can't just go and try to improve everything at once. So how do you take those? And that's where we feel that modularization is the key. You know, it helps you reduce the cognitive load, make changes in a safer way, enable a lot of the things that we talked about to reduce waste in your kind of value stream, those kinds of things. So you need to have some kind of strategy towards modernization. What those modules look like is all based on, you know, how do they need to face the business, right? The teams and modules are very much need to be very much aligned, right? It's that Conway's law that I'm sure everyone knows about, is that, you know, the structures of communication structures of the organization reflect the way the software is built, right? So you need to make sure that those are in sync, and all that is in sync with the way the change is coming into the business, so that you don't have this a million meetings to coordinate everything to make one feature possible. And the other thing is around nurturing, right? So you need to know what kind of culture you are trying to create. So here is an example of, it's called the computing values framework, and it talks about like these 4 different kind of cultures. And of course, it's not as clean cut as that, because you need a bit of everything at different times. But you need to understand how are you nurturing your organization? You know, what kind of organization you're trying to create. Like this, in this framework, there are these 2 kind of axes. Like on top there is flexibility, bottom is stability, and then external focus and internal focus. And if you want full flexibility and external focus, you need to create a creative organization, right? Or something where creativity is nurtured. But if you're looking for external focus for stability, you need to create a goal-oriented organization that has a very strong direction, right? So you can use these kind of things to help understand how your organization, how the culture within your organization needs to be like. And then how do you make it all happen, right? I mean, what do? You kind of get a separate team? Do you have specialized team doing improvements, other team doing features? Do you have different teams looking after their own kind of areas of improvements? Do you have this 20% improvement tax, as people call it? You kind of time box for a particular team to do work on improvements. Well, you need to decide, right? This is all related to, if you have everything else, if you have a good direction, if you have a good next step, if you have a good vision, if you understand what needs to be done, then it's about saying what kind of commitment, what is the needs of the business, and how do I balance that with the needs to constantly improve. Right? So there are a few examples, so I'll quickly go through them. Like this is a typical value stream mapping, that we've done for one of our clients, kind of taking them through their current process. Then we look at like different problems. Here we're saying that, your ideation is only done at the beginning, testing is right at the end, things are not good. Then we start kind of re-engineering their process to see how that would work, and how things can improve. So this is kind of creating that vision for different aspects of the software development capability in a way. This is an example of a typical roadmap, but this is for a client which has a lot of systems that are completely done in very manual and traditional way, and how we're gonna move each system into a kind of a continuous delivery platform as a service mode. This is an example where we take some aspects and a very large system, and how do we focus in based on values, the inefficiencies, what experiments are we going to run where, those kind of things. Again, helping them organize towards modernization. Right? Wordly maps is another good way of looking at things, is to kind of look at what are the things that are real value, which are your secret sauce, the ones that you need to kind of keep in a custom way, and where can you actually commoditize areas so that you're not building everything yourself. This is another example of an evolution metrics for like a very quite a few systems in terms of different aspects of the system. What does it look like now, and where does it need to be, right? So you can start creating certain plans and kind of getting everyone on the same page on where you want to be. So this is a typical example of a website that grew in many different ways. They were using Hybris, and they had websites, but then they had lots of web views, and apps came later on, and then everything got very, very confused. And apps using web views, but they don't know which parts, and sometimes it's scraping websites, and like it's becoming, and even inside you don't know what is a core service and what is actually just a website and so on. It's all become a big mess. And then we kind of work with them in order to understand what that mess looks like at a good level of abstraction, so that they can see the problem. And then how do we kind of move things out? In this case, we're moving out the web channel for now, and kind of taking the next steps and saying, we kind of really marking that thing off. And we know that and start using kind of this idea of core services. And we know that there will be a mess in between, but where we want to move towards is a segregation of channels. Web is a channel, apps is a channel, there may be other channels, and the core services that are supporting that channel. This is a kind of looking at their process in terms of how they build the software, how things are coming in, how they actually create the features, and the problems with those features, with that way of creating features, and how that can move to a better way of working, kind of branching strategy, release strategy, those kind of things. This is a way of showing to one of our clients, they had a really messy way and no real understanding of what they're testing where, and how to create a clear boundary and a better vocabulary within their teams, so that when they say what kind of test they're doing, they know what it is, and it's not all mixed, and so that they can have real criteria in terms of how long and how kind of what the responsibility of each kind of test should be. This is a roadmap for like some kind of high-level guide in how to create communities of practice to nurture certain types of cultures, right? So that's it. Sorry, I went through it a bit fast because I know it take a bit longer than I intended. So that's it.